Hi, welcome to the third part of the ADA Small and Government Intervention lecture of the Introduction to Economics course. This lecture series is prepared for the Windows Technical University, Northern Cyprus campus. And this is the very last lecture of this course. And last time we were talking about the background information of the government intervention, and we have seen that even Marx itself actually must state that state interventions usually delay the crisis but make them more severe. Engels basically wrote that in the later phases of the capitalist system, uh, the businessman will be more and more willing to get state intervention because instability of the system will increase. But basically, state intervention again can create just only short-term solutions. In the long run, it doesn't solve the instability problem of the capitalist system, according to Engels. So those are kind of pre-Keynesian views. Most of them, there could be some side views, but most of them on the state intervention. Uh, Great Depression has created some change on this, and it has created actually, like Engels says, some kind of demand for state intervention. Even though there was no major economic theory that was supporting it. I'm not talking about Marx and Engels, who were seen as radicals, but in the mainstream there was nothing that they could take on. Um, so initial in the Great Depression, which was centered on the United States, initial president was called Hoover. That's the president before Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who maybe you might know if you're interested in U.S. history. Hoover is now famous. There's a dam named on him, Hoover Dam, and he basically after when the depression has started, it has created a lot of poverty in the United States. It has created certain relief programs and subsidies. I mean, you decrease the prices that the low-income people buy by paying to the companies that sell those goods part of the cost. Okay? Um, but all of these cost programs were basically in order to decrease the severity of the poverty until the depression is gone. The main process that would basically end the depression should, according to Hoover, be shaped by the economic system itself. The state should not play a role in it. So state doesn't do anything to end the depression itself because it was assumed that the economic system should be self-correcting. Of course, uh, Hoover did something. He basically, uh, at the time of the crisis, in order to keep the state, well, assuming the income of the state will be smaller at the time of crisis, since not less people will pay taxes, he has basically make sure the government doesn't run deficit, so he should decrease the government spending and increase the taxation and also increase interest rate. Also, tight monetary policy. He had basically a monetary policy where, in order to keep financial system more intact, basically, um, and get more resources from the financial market as a state. He makes sure that, well, the interest rate is high so that more people will borrow to the state. And all of these policies, actually, according to some mainstream economists, they had actually created a reverse effect. So unknowingly, he has stimulated depression, according to those uh, economists. However, basically, Hoover's mind, as far as we know, to end depression is basically leave it to the economic forces. I mean, state might have only maybe a minor role at most in it. Although some economists discuss Hoover's period, so you should note that also. Roosevelt, when he came to the power, the president after Hoover, was told as the president who wants to do something on the depression. Again, whether or not what he did actually ended the depression is a discussion in itself also. he created huge stimulus programs, which paid directly to the people, especially old people, through social security program. The payments done by the states to the old people, retirement payments, is something started in the United States by Roosevelt himself. And still, right-wing people hate the program, social security program, which is paying to the old people again, pensions. Retirement payments, basically. That's what pensions are. And he also created huge government programs, which increased the demand of the government also. Well, basically, he thought that if private sector failed to provide jobs and income to the people, state should step in and provide them, but only for temporary. In the end, if private sector just can overcome the difficulties, well, state should step back a little bit, basically. That was his main idea, basically. And note that he presented this idea in 1932 before he was elected, and started implementing those policies with the name New Deal in 1933. These days are important because Keynes, when he brought his book, that was published his book. It was the year was 1936, already 4 years after Roosevelt has presented those ideas, and 3 years after he started to implement them. So in a way, Roosevelt could be predecessor of Keynes, and kind of he connected Keynesian policies before Keynes put them in place with also some social democratic ideas, like, for example, assisting, even creating a permanent assistance, because pensions stayed after the depression was done, to the people who might be disadvantaged, like the old people, basically, and also the labor capital regulations. That's also something he has contributed on. He make it easier for the labor to bargain with their employers. But that's another story, and a very interesting story itself, but another story. Anyway, so now you have state that is doing some spending, but state might do spending because there are needs for spending, because state needs to build some infrastructure or operate certain programs. But with Roosevelt and Keynes, the economic context he put Roosevelt in, basically stated government might just do spending to improve the economic system, not because what is necessary, but to improve the economic system. So when government does spending, also depend after that to when basically the economic system needs that spending. So have sufficient level of demand, not needed because it needs infrastructure. So now government spending becomes an economic tool, and what to spend for becomes, in that sense, relatively less important. At least when we take it as an economic tool. Of course, once you accept there needs to be spending, then you can discuss about spending. So now the question becomes: can the financial policies, which were previously stated to basically decrease the fragility of the financial system, make financial system more strong, can also be used to basically stimulate the economic system. And here comes the basic idea that, well, the relation between the investment and the interest rate. By decreasing the interest rate, it is possible to increase investment level, because there will be to basically borrow money more cheaply. And especially after the 1970s, where the government spending, government debt become an issue that is discussed, and especially, I mean, that the workers with too many social programs, well, just choose to be unemployed, or become too expensive to hire workers because they demand high wages. After these questions were put to place, the idea become some economists, for example, Milton Friedman, start to argue that maybe government spending is not a way, which is called also fiscal policy, is not a good way to stimulate the economy. If you instead apply monetary policy, which with adjusting the interest rate, basically you stimulate the investments and investments of the private sector. And then private sector they make the investment in most efficient way in the sectors which have highest level of demand. So monetary policies, in that sense, according to this view, could be superior to the fiscal policies, which are based on spending. However, those policies can only be effective if the interest rate is above zero. If it is zero, already zero, you cannot, and economy still is not in good shape, you cannot decrease the interest rate even further. At the zero interest rate, companies are not borrowing because they think they will lose the money. If they lose the money, even if the interest rate is zero, they won't be able to pay it. In that case, the monetary policies won't work, and you are just left with fiscal policies. So this discussion on the fiscal policies and monetary policies is a big discussion in economics, and some ideas, especially on the fiscal policies, is if you spend the government spending, basically, if you are close to this potential output level. Basically, when government spends more, there is only the potential output level is fixed, so the investment level will decrease. So economic system will be harmed because basically economic system won't grow or not grow efficiently according to the demand of the people in that country. And in the end, you don't have any as much increase as you want because basically the increase in demand created by government spending is taken out by the decrease in the investment spending. There's another way, another economist who is talking on this in a little bit more complex way. And then, according to other idea, the government's fiscal policy implementation may take long because first you need to decide, then you need to approve, then you need to decide what to spend on, then you need to spend the money, and after that spending will create stimulation. So at the time, if fiscal policy, that spending has shown its effect, it might already be too late. I mean, maybe the crisis has passed and your spending is just create inflation because the economic system might already be close to the potential output. So when you spend more, you cannot increase the output level, but you increase just the prices. So this idea is expressed by the idea fool in shower. It's like in shower, when you open hot water, it takes some time, sometimes a few minutes even, for the water getting on the tap to get hot. So a fool opens first hot water. If it opens too much hot water, the water becomes too hot, and then it closes the hot water, opens the cold water. But then you need again time until the water gets cold. So until this happens, he continues to open the cold water. Then it becomes too cold. Then it closes the cold water, opens the hot water. So basically, it always uses this hot water, cold water at wrong time periods because of this reaction time lag. Many of these topics are also mentioned after the background. So, but because they are so much fitting into the background, I also wanted to mention them here. So when we come to the part where we mention them in the main context, I will pass them a little bit more fast, since we have also mentioned them here. We are left with two other critics. One is Ricardo, not 19th century Ricardo, but a 20th century Ricardo, another economist. And then Minsky. And then basically we will go to a little math part. We will start looking to the little math part. But this we will do that in the next part.